Hello everyone and welcome to Golden Key Education's Scholarship Guide into Written Expressions and Opinion Piece Writing. Today we're going to take an opportunity to look at an example opinion piece that typically appears in an entrance exam into Year 7 scholarship programs. So, the stimulus typically appears as a statement, in this case in a question form, and has the student contemplate the implications of that statement. Some preliminary instructions are typically given, and what the examiner is looking for is an argumentative and a persuasive piece, or otherwise an expository response that discusses the various elements and ideas around the statement provided. So, without further ado, please take some time to consider and evaluate the statement in front of you. Pause the video if you need to, and then continue the video when you are ready. Okay, so how do we tackle this? Here's our statement. First thing we must do is take out the keywords and elements, identify what these key terms are that will allow us to formulate a response. So, if I look at this statement, if you had just one wish to make the world a better place, what would you wish for? The key terminologies that appear in this statement that will allow us to formulate any sort of idea is the idea of a wish that you as a person and an individual would make, the idea that there is a world whose fortunes and whose outcome would be affected by your decision, your wish. And then the idea that our choice, our decision, has an end goal, the objective of making that world a better place. So the arguments that are interconnected are you, the person, the wish maker, the world whose wish will be influenced, and then the idea that the influence you bring upon the world through your wish will make it a better place. So our elements, our fundamental level 1 elements are the wish, the world, and the fact that it can be converted to a better place. Now, what are some of the secondary and tertiary ideas that can hang off these key words? Well, let's look at the word wish. Wishes can be personal aspirations. When we wish for something, these wishes are driven by our opinions and our views of the world. And often they can be very selfish as well. Right? They can be self-oriented. And as discussed, they represent our personal worldview. So, for example, when we're asked to wish for something that makes a world a better place, every candidate, every student has an idea of what would make a world a better place. And not surprisingly, if we were to ask a number of students what that thing may be that would make a world a better place, many of them would agree on ideas that are similar in nature, but every now and then you would get differences in terms of what one person would think would make a world a better place compared to someone else. And it's those differences, the diversity in that opinion, which makes this prompt all the more interesting. But nonetheless, we need to be aware that these personal aspirations and personal worldviews affect our response, because ultimately it is about making the world a better place rather than making it a better place for ourselves alone. There are others at play here. And that's what we're going to contemplate with our next expansion, the ideas around the terminology of world. So, the term world suggests inclusivity because there are many people living in the world, and these people come from different backgrounds and have different concerns. So all places and all people, all the continents, all the different ethnicities and races all come together to form this idea that we know of as the world. The world is also plagued by systemic crises that are not limited to disease, terrorism, warfare, etc. The ideas here doesn't need to be excessively morbid, but students need to recognize that the world is far from perfect and that these crises are real and they create substantial problems for everyone who lives in the world. There are also fractured alliances, where the idea behind this statement is if we were to agree, then we would be able to solve the problem. But because we don't agree, then as a result of that disagreement, we are not able to solve our problems. So students should also recognize that there are an abundant amount of opportunities for people around the world to make it a better place, but because of bickering and the inability to come together and reach consensus, we are not able to solve these problems. And what is so telling about and what is so disappointing about these fractured alliances is we have everything we need to solve some of these problems, but we simply couldn't come together in order to do so. And then, of course, everyone has different needs and different opinions. So what is problematic for one person or one group of people may not be so problematic or concerning for another group of people. So that's something to keep in mind as well. The exploration here would feature heavily in the student's writing, and it would really give the examiner a sense of how open-minded and how broad the student's thinking is. So the idea behind a better place is, well, we can do a number of things to make the world a better place. One of the first things that came to my mind was disease eradication. Right? We've done a lot with eradicating certain diseases, but there's a lot more that we can do. And of course, I haven't mentioned any particular disease, but that floor is open for the student to explore. Food security, which is the elimination of starvation. Social security, the fact that everyone has a roof to live under, that everyone has a job to go to, that everyone can feed and fend for themselves, and that they don't have to worry about things like getting old and not being able to support oneself. So again, we're starting to diversify the pool of ideas and the pool of opinions that relate to what would make the world a better place. And different people will place different emphasis on different things. And part of what the examiner will be looking for is how would the student reconcile these differences? The fact that everyone has a slightly different idea as to what would make the world a better place. What would the student say or do to try and bring these things together? Energy and resources. So again, taking it to another dimension. And then education and literacy, which is quite important because with knowledge comes the empowerment to make changes which would make the world a better place. So let's try and construct a narrative around some of these ideas and see where the connections lie. So let's look at the wish column. To make a wish on behalf of the world is an enormous privilege and responsibility. The writer needs to acknowledge the challenge of remaining impartial. That is, they and they alone have the responsibility and the power to make this wish, and yet the implications and the consequences of that wish would apply and affect everyone around the world, not just them. So they can't afford to be selfish here. They can't afford just to make wishes that would make the lives of their life and the lives of those around them a better place. Their wish needs to be all-encompassing so that it would, for the better part, improve the lives of everyone around the world, most of whom the wishmaker would not know firsthand. So it's an enormous responsibility, and the wishmaker needs to be aware of their own weaknesses, which is the idea that there's so much they don't know about the world. So how would they even go about making that wish? And that idea needs to really come out in the writing. The fact that it's not as simple as just simply making a wish. The responsibility itself makes it an incredible burden. So, as we move from clarifying the idea of wish into the idea of world, we need to carry away with us the concept that the wish maker needs to think selflessly. The wish maker needs to think about everyone, if that is even possible. So, as we look at the terms around the idea of world, we come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as a single world. Our world is a combination, a melting pot made up of its people and its cultures that are incredibly diverse and difficult to categorize into one or two categories. And the idea that our needs, wants, and concerns are all very different. So then how do we make the world a better place? How do we make a wish that will benefit everyone, not only benefit a few over here and then disadvantage a few over there? How do we be fair and equitable? So the idea here is to think broadly. That's the takeaway message, the objective from looking at the idea of world. When we think broadly, we start to think about everybody. And so therefore our wish becomes more informed and it becomes more equitable and fair. And so as we contemplate these things, we have to in the end make a decision and arrive at a conclusion. So again, a student can take many different directions here, but the particular direction that I've taken, that I will also encourage other students to take, is don't be fixated with a certain physical thing. Don't be fixated with a certain cure. Think more broadly, as recommended, and think about fundamentally what allows us to create solutions to our problems, right? What is that fundamental first principles layer that allows us to make our lives better? And so I've decided to go with knowledge, education, and literacy. If we had one wish to make the world a better place, what would we wish for? We would wish for eternal, enhanced, and everlasting knowledge and the gain of that knowledge. Why? Because knowledge and education is the foundation of progress, stability, and equity. And that is my argument. I'm standing in the shoes of the candidate, so in this case, that is the candidate's argument. And the fact that our betterment or the betterment of our lives comes from knowing things that will allow us to create solutions to problems. So rather than being fixated with any one problem, whether it be social security, energy, disease, or food security, let's focus on the fundamental layer of making the world a more educated and literate place, so that we are able to create the seeds of the next generation, an informed generation that have the tools and the mental aptitude to create solutions to solve our problems. So this is the skeleton, the proposed skeleton for an opinion piece narrative. And again, the exact details are not disclosed here, but what we have is a solid approach towards dissecting the prompt, developing a concept map that allows us to see the different terminologies and how they flow, and then just a very basic plan as to how we propagate through these ideas so that we can use them to expand on these ideas and generate further content.